All right, and we are back. This is Nathan Crane here, your host, founder of the Panacea Community and the organizer of the book, 27 Flavors of Fulfillment, How to Live Life to the Fullest. We have David Dibble here, my trusty co-host.
Thank you so much.
Also creator of DreamWork and one of the contributing authors of the book. And we have Colin Tipping here, who I'm honored, who flew all the way in from Atlanta and brought a wonderful message to share. And, I mean, I'm talking about let's get radical, all right? Can we get radical today? Because your chapter is all about radical living for an expanded consciousness. I think it's that time of the day where it's time to get radical. It's time to turn things up a little bit. I just want to share Colin. Colin's the creator of one of the most powerful leading-edge technologies for personal and spiritual growth today, which is called Radical Forgiveness. It is a best-selling book, and hundreds of thousands of people have bought it and read it and used it and so forth, and he's an acknowledged authority on the application of this technology to the healing of individuals, families, races, corporations, communities, and so forth. And you know, thank you for coming out and being with us.
My pleasure. First of all, I want to honor you for doing this. I mean, it's just incredible what you put together here. I mean, it's one thing to have a book and to read things from people just 2.5 pages or 3 pages or so, but then to have them on here so that you can really get their essence and feel their realness and their intimacy. It's been a real joy for me to just sit here and listen to all these different people.
Yeah.
You know, Adam and Michael were just extraordinary. So I'm happy to be here. I'm glad I made the effort to come out. And talking about radical, I guess I should tell you a little story. There was this one lady out in Australia. I was doing this workshop, and it was out in the boonies somewhere. I can't remember quite where it was. But as I usually do, there was about 20 people there. I said, you know, tell me why you're here. You know, what do you want out of it? So she was about the last to go, this lady, and she was very flamboyantly dressed with a big hat and big cloak. And I said, well, why are you here? She said, I'll come to anything with the word radical in it.
Sweet.
So I chose that I was lucky in choosing that word radical because you put it against, because I'm known for radical forgiveness, right? That's really my what I'm known for, even though I've broadened it out now to radical living, which includes other things besides forgiveness. It includes manifestation and transformation and empowerment and so on. It's all radical. But with the forgiveness, it really those two words really, well, first of all, radical invites the question, you know, what's radical about it? And when you do know what radical forgiveness is, it is quite radical. It's a very big challenge to one's normal way of thinking about how things are and how we relate to victimhood and people doing things, bad things to us. But it's also, the word radical is a male word and forgiveness is a female word. So there's a great juxtaposition of energies there. That worked really well for me. So I'm very grateful for that, having been given that, because I'm sure it came through grace. But my title in this book, which is Radical Living for an Expanded Consciousness. So let's look at what expanded consciousness means. And I think having come fairly late in the day-to-day, I've heard endless people describing it, of what an expanded consciousness really is, where we come from the heart all the time, and where we really get real with each other, when we can really be honest with each other, as you were talking about just now with Gary, was it? No.
With Adam. Gainsburg,
with Adam. Yeah. That was a great conversation there. That we can be operating in our life with an expanded consciousness, which includes not only a facility to deal with what we've got in the world right now in front of us, everyday reality, but we also are very aware that there's this other reality that we're operating simultaneously, spiritual reality. So the more expanded we become in this realization that there's more than, or that we're operating simultaneously in these two realities, that the more our life becomes more expanded, the more it becomes more peaceful, more efficient, and so on. And so really that's what I mean by an expanded consciousness. But then the question arises, how? Right. How do we do this? And we've heard a number of methods today, particularly the breath. I really believe in breath work. I think breath work is essential.
Mm-hmm.
We always do breath work when we're doing our forgiveness workshops as part of the procedure. And my wife is a certified breath worker, so we work together, which is always wonderful.
Is she certified through Breathworks from the UK, from Vidyamala Birch, or different?
She's American.
Okay.
I'm English, but she's American. I've lived here now for 26 years. She's from Illinois. She studied with a guy who's now gone over. What's the word?
Passed on?
Passed on. Died. Yeah.
Over. Transition. Yeah.
Oh, croaked.
Whatever.
That's the word.
That sounds proper.
Now I understand.
But she's done many hours of training in breath work, so I defer to her when it comes to doing the breath work, and so it's a good team. We love working together. So the how of it was a big challenge for me, because I didn't really come to spiritual work until I was in my 50s. I hadn't really got much background in it, certainly no religious background, which I think is an advantage. And so I started to pick up a lot of books about spiritual growth and how to do things and so on and so forth, but they were all very interesting and they were inspiring, but very few of them said, now this is what you do. This is how you do it.
Yeah.
And at age 50 or whatever I was in a bit of a hurry, right? I'm thinking, oh, I want this, but I want it quick.
Yeah.
And I was a little frustrated with the idea that people couldn't give me a good, solid roadmap of how to do it. And then I was attracted to the concept of forgiveness, and that was clearly my path. I didn't know it at the time, of course, but I've come to know it as what I was meant to do, as my mission. And I don't know why, because I really didn't have much in the way of a big forgiveness issue to deal with myself. I mean, I've had a couple of divorces, but then who hasn't? I mean, come on. So it wasn't that it was coming from that place, and I don't really know to this day why it came to me to do it. And I do feel that I've been given it as a role to play, to develop it. So forgiveness had that same quality of not knowing how to do it. Everybody said you should do it. Every major religion in the world says you must do it. It's essential for spiritual growth and so on and so forth, right? And yet, when you come to do it and say, well, how? Nobody really has an answer. And that was, I found frustrating. So at that time, in the early 90s, Joanne and I, my wife, we were doing work with cancer patients. I'd become a hypnotherapist at that time, and I was attracting these people with cancer. Once again, I didn't know why. No background in it. I had nobody in my family or Joanne's family in that. But it was a fact. And then, of course, we realized with a little bit of knowledge that the issue that people with cancer have a great deal is a lack of forgiveness and a problem with it, that their strategy for dealing with pain, emotional pain, is always to suppress it and repress it. Well, we all know from what everybody said today that kind of thing comes out as a physical disease and so on. So we needed, so since these folks had spent a lifetime avoiding therapy of any kind, they weren't going to be coming to say, yeah, we do the shadow work. Oh, yeah. Right. They weren't going to do that. So we had to kill them into coming, because we thought that, they thought they were going to have a nice, relaxing time and so on. They didn't know they were going to do any work. But we needed a form of forgiveness that could be quick and very easy and therapy-free. Okay. And so that required a different way of looking at forgiveness. And of course, Course in Miracles was a formative idea in my mind, that forgiveness is something that is a way of looking at the world and what happens to you in a completely different way to what we're used to, in that you look at it from the point of view that nothing happens for a reason, that we're always being given these challenges. In fact, they're self-created challenges by our own soul, by our own higher self, to help us to grow spiritually. In fact, this is even why we come to this planet, is to have these experiences and to choose them and to have soul contracts that we may have made up even before we came here, that certain people would do certain things for us in order to experience certain types of separation experiences, abuse or betrayal or abandonment or those kind of things. And so we started to work with this. And what I realized that we needed to have some tools to help people grapple with that one, because it's so radical, the idea, well, everything happens for a reason, it's all perfect, and there's nothing to forgive. That's pretty radical. And it's not new, of course, it's been out there a long time, but it's not how the mainstream considers forgiveness.
Right.
The mainstream considers forgiveness to be something that only very special people can do, that you have to be some sort of a saint to do it, that it's extremely difficult, and if you achieve it, you're likely to get on Oprah. You know, that's how difficult most people think of it. So that wasn't going to work for these folks, and we wanted to find a way to help them come to a place of peace where they could let go of all the toxic emotion, the toxic belief systems that they had in their bodies that was causing the cancer in the first place, and the toxicity in their spiritual body too, right? From religious beliefs that they were bad and they'd fallen and blah, blah, blah. So we created these worksheets which all it asked them to do was to be willing to be open to that possibility. No belief system. You didn't have to believe anything. I wasn't selling any sort of theory of, or even that it was true. In fact, I even now say, I don't even believe it. I don't believe this radical forgiveness stuff at all. But I know that it works. So that's all I care about. And it's very effective when people fill in these, what appear to be very simple worksheets, step by step by step by step. What it's actually doing is taking us through a process where we start out with our story of what happened, what this person did to us. And then we then touch into our feelings, which is step number 2. How did it make us feel, and how do we feel now about it? It's very important that we feel our feelings. And then the third step, which is the best that traditional forgiveness can give us, is to what we call collapse the story, and that's where we take the story and say, okay, now, what would it be like if I were to walk in that person's shoes? How I, you know, can I bring some understanding and mercy to this situation? Can I strip out some of the interpretations that I've made about myself, taking it all too personally, and so on and so forth. So we're really bringing the best of what we call human qualities to the situation and pulling them out so that we're left with the raw story of what actually happened. Okay, so that, and try to bring some understanding and compassion and empathy to the situation.
And that takes some skill and some art and some work to be able to, you know, separate an emotionally charged idea about what happened and get to the truth of what actually happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's a discipline, and that's traditional forgiveness, but that's as far as it goes. And the essential point about that is that even though you do that, you still believe that something wrong happened. Yeah. That you've been victimized, and it shouldn't have happened that way. It was tragic, or it was bad luck, or married the wrong person, or whatever it was, right? So when we go radical with this, what we say is that what happened was meant to happen that way. That there's nothing wrong about it because that's exactly what you wanted. It's exactly what you created, and it didn't happen to you, but it happened for you. Yeah. Right. And in that sense, it's grace.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You know. I loved your chapter in the book, and I had the opportunity to interview you. Yeah. Which was, I learned a lot more. One of the things that you mentioned in the book was about the workplace. Yes. And that you're actually starting to take this into the workplace. My first thought was, oh my gosh, the workplace, you know, where taking what appear to be universal spiritual principles into the workplace. Yes. But it looks like you're having some success and there's some acceptance.
Things have changed dramatically, I think, in the last few years. I think there's a yearning for it, both in the individuals, within individuals, and within quite a large number of companies today. And that because they know that it all links up with the other hot buttons like sustainability and all the other things that people are signing up to now, the greens and everything else. But there's a spiritual component to all of that. So how can we bring these kind of principles and the tools, because I'm just such a proponent of us having tools. If we try to do it in the head, it doesn't work. Those tools take it to a level of your spiritual intelligence. Your mental intelligence is useless as far as I'm concerned when it comes to this. Really. Yeah. The dumber you are, the better you are. Okay? Because intelligent people try to figure it out. Yeah. And it's not figure-outable. Okay? We don't know the reasons why these
things dumber by the minute. This is great.
We don't know why these things happen, right? So yeah, I'm having some success in business because the actual individuals want to use it, but so do they realize that it's going to be a great benefit to their company if they integrate it into the culture of the business, because they understand that with what we know about radical forgiveness is that that when we have a wound that's usually childhood wound that's been repressed, we have this internal healing mechanism that is not going to let it just stay there. Sooner or later, it's going to force it to come up, to be healed. And if we're not really awake to this, when it does come up, it comes out as a fight, a conflict, blaming someone else for something going wrong. In other words, it's explosive and it's very unhelpful and very bad for the corporation.
Yeah.
Yes. Because it might be good for the person because they're going through what we might call a healing crisis, right? Where they eventually, hopefully, will wake up to the fact that it's all part of their shadow material that's coming up and, oh, this is an opportunity. But for the most part, at the beginning, when it happens to people who are not awake and unconscious, it comes out as something very negative.
Yeah.
So while it is a healing crisis for them and therefore helpful, it can be extremely damaging to a corporation, especially if this person's senior. If he's a senior executive, it can ruin the company. If it happens to the CEO, or the CFO, who then acts his drama out as a sabotage or whatever, or if he's got a mama drama, he's got some stuff going on with his mother that he hasn't healed, well, what's he going to do? He's going to find somebody in the corporation who reminds him of his mother, usually some colleague at the same level, and he will make trouble for her because he's acting out his trouble.
Yeah.
So the principle that I teach people is that comes straight from the Course in Miracles is that we're never upset for the reason we think. Yeah. There's always something underneath.
Yep.
And so any supervisor that's been trained by us will be trained to look out for that, or any manager or any director or CFO will look out for, okay, something's going on here. What's going on really? What's the real problem? Let me show you how we can resolve that without you even knowing what it is. And that's the worksheet, okay? I changed the names a little bit, okay? Instead of calling it radical forgiveness, I call it the quantum energy management system.
Oh, perfect for corporate America.
Right? And the negative energy that is coming up to be healed, I call that humanergy. On the basis that there's 4 forms of energy flowing through any company. There's materials, money, information, and human energy. And this stuff that's unconscious, the stuff that we've buried that has the propensity to be acted out at any moment, I call that humanergy. So it's human energy. I coined that term. And so I'm finding that people are really getting it, that they understand that if they can really help give people who work for them the tools to deal with their own stuff, to deal with their shadow material that's coming up, then it empowers them, of course, because then you've got the self-forgiveness starts to work its way in as well. And we show them how to do that, how to sort of forgive themselves as well as forgive other people. Then they realize that that's having a bottom line effect, and their productivity goes up, their morale goes up, the amount of attrition, which is extremely costly to a corporation. If you lose an executive, it can take you 5 years to get him back in terms of, or get somebody replaced and bring him up to that same level, and an awful lot of money. So it's worth spending some money to bring the quantum energy management system in, integrate it, train people to use it, and it can save them millions. So I'm very heartened by it. It's fairly new for me to go back to doing work with the corporations. I did some years ago, and then I got attracted to Europe. Europe is very open to this stuff. Germany, Switzerland, and so I've been over there quite a lot. Yes, very, very open. Well, perhaps even more open than here.
Yeah, David's been doing a lot of work over the years in the workplace, spiritual work as well, and so he has a lot of experience with. He uses a process called on the wall, which is like bringing out the whole situation and putting it up on the wall, and it's really powerful as well.
Yeah.
I mean, your process sounds
funnily enough,
very powerful. Yeah.
How much time we got?
How much time you want? We're the last two speakers here. We've got about 5 minutes.
All right. Well, I'm talking about being on the wall, and I guess I can teach everybody this little process, because it's always nice to give away a tool, and it's the only tool that you use actually in the moment when something's going wrong. Most of the other tools, the worksheets and the audio tools that we have, you use when you're in a more reflective mood and you're not just in your anger and so on and so forth, because it's almost spiritual abuse when you say to someone who's in the midst of a great breakdown, well, you know it's all perfect. You know you created this, right?
They're like, are you kidding me?
So that
Get out of here.
You're looking for a learning experience.
So that's what I call spiritual abuse, actually, because the people used to do that with people with cancer. They used to say, well, you know you've created your cancer, don't you? Oh. I mean, it was terrible in those days. I don't think people do it now. They're a little bit more sophisticated. But anyway, so I had this group of people in Switzerland who were all entrepreneurs, business managers or business owners, different levels. And I taught them all the tools on the first weekend. I have them for 3 weekends in the year, okay, so a total of 9 days. And on the first weekend, I teach them the basics and give them the tools. I said, now I want you to try these out in your company, and then when we come back next, whenever it is, September, I want feedback. Which was the best one? Which one did you use? Which one did you find most effective? Expecting them to say the worksheet or, you know, one of the more sophisticated computer-based ones, they came back and they said, no, 4 steps. So this is the 4-step process, and you need to commit this to memory, because it will save you to going to victim land, really, anytime when something happens. It's very simple. Look what I created. That's the first step, which is to take responsibility. You've actually created this or co-created this situation. Right? Look what I created. And then step number 2 is to say, I notice my judgments and my feelings, but I love myself anyway, right? Because you're gonna have judgments, aren't you? If somebody rear-ends you in the car, you're gonna go, right. But the first thing that should come to your mind is, look what I created, and you say it to yourself, right? So I notice my judgments and my feelings and love myself anyway. The 3rd step is the radical forgiveness step, but you only have to be willing. I always stress this, willing to be willing to be willing. I give you so much wiggle room, you can't believe it. And you say to yourself, I am willing to see the perfection in this situation. And you usually say it through clenched teeth.
I can see how that works.
Yeah.
I'm willing to see the perfection in this. All right. And then the 4th step is I choose peace.
That's beautiful.
And you keep repeating that over and over. And what it does, it stops you going into that instant consciousness of being victimized. It just helps you to stay conscious.
It's actually pulling you into a higher state of awareness, isn't it?
Yes.
In some way.
Yes.
You know what would be amazing is if you had that printed on like business cards that you can put in your wallet. And you know, because when someone hits you, it's like, oh, what did Colin Tipping say again?
Just reach for your wallet.
Yeah, hold on. It's like,
hold on a minute.
It'll be a little bit faster if I just took it here. All right.
Holy crap, where's my wallet?
Never mind the insurance. Let's do the 4 steps.
I think that'd be really effective. Absolutely.
Driver's license, insurance, and I'd like to see what's in your wallet.
But you know,
And then when the person behind you comes up and starts pounding on your window, you can hand them a card.
that's right. Look what you created.
Read this, Colin Tipping.
Oh my gosh, you created a monster.
We both created it. Anyway, to pick up on your story about the wall, one of the entrepreneurs there was a restaurant owner, had a very big restaurant in Switzerland, very upper class, really nice food. And so he'd got a pretty big kitchen with a lot of chefs. And he shared on the second weekend, he said, I printed that out on a big piece of paper, like this size of a piece of paper, and I put it all around the kitchen, everywhere
Smart.
around the kitchen. And as soon as anybody complained or something went wrong, 4 steps.
Read the wall.
That's really
And
great.
he said they really loved it because
Nice.
it just brought them down to earth,
Yeah.
and made, they felt real and so on. So that's the 4-step process. If you can remember it, if not, write it down, and that'll save your life. It really will.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all part of the expanding. Not only do we have to expand our consciousness, but we have to stay there. That's the challenge. We can, when we come to a thing like this, and we hear all this wonderful stuff, we can go home expanded. But then, how do we hold that expansion? Right. How can we anchor that in? And so these tools help us to, when we get upset, if something happens, then we can reach for these, or do the 4 steps, and that will keep us in that expanded state and more expanded, and will help to drop us into the heart, which after all, which is what we've been talking about all day long, is being able to drop into the heart.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I have to ask you, what is the story behind your vest?
Oh, okay.
This is radical right here. This is I don't know if maybe we have to get a little closer to the camera, but there's all these patches here.
Shall I?
If you want to stand up, there we go.
Oh,
So on the back, radical forgiveness transforms.
Yeah.
And then what's it say on the heart? There's a heart there in the back. The feet. Radical forgiveness, all kinds of patches, and I mean, this thing is amazing.
They're all quotes from my book, Radical Forgiveness. This is actually the second one.
Surrender by the candle.
Yeah, and these are
Hurt, anger, rage. Hurt, anger, rage, and company.
Yeah. These are the chakras.
Oh, nice.
Right here.
Oh,
this was our logo. Now, how this came about was that we had I had a workshop in Australia in 2001, and I was fairly new to this. And as a radical concept, it's not easy to really anchor it so deep that no matter what, it's never a challenge. And I wasn't there. I hadn't got it that deeply anchored. And this lady came in to the workshop on the Friday night and told her story, and it was so heart-rending. Her daughter had been abducted out of her bedroom at 2 o'clock in the morning. They'd never found her.
Oof.
And she, just a few weeks before the workshop, her son had been killed with a hit-and-run driver.
Oh my gosh.
So she was pretty distraught, as you can imagine, because the police were all over them. They tried to make out that it was even her husband that took the daughter. I mean, it was just awful.
Gee.
So I was feeling myself losing the idea that everything's perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, so I had to share with the group. I said, in the face of a story like that, I don't know that I can hold this idea that everything happens for a reason, that it's all divinely guided, and it's the daughter's divine plan, it's your divine plan. How can I hold that? So I asked them. I said, I'm going to leave it to you. Would you like to have your money back? And I'll burn the book, and we'll all go home. Because if I can, I was serious about that.
I'm done.
This is bull. This is BS. So
hardly knew you.
I come all the way to Australia just to burn the book.
Oh man.
Or we can carry on and go through the process and see what happens. And they said, "Hey, we paid our money. Let's go through the process." So we did it, and it came to the end of the workshop on Sunday afternoon, and this lady was in a state of pure bliss, just as Adam was talking about. She said, I absolutely get it, and I feel it totally within my body that my daughter is where she needs to be, and that's exactly what she needed to happen, and I'm where I needed to be, and that everything is perfect. Well, I mean, for her to be able to do that was extraordinary. So we all went, I mean, it lifted everybody, saved my career, because I didn't have to burn the book. So Joanne and I went on to Brisbane to do the same thing again there, and not this one, but one like it, turned up in the mail. She had made it that night.
Oh, wow.
As a form of saying thank you, and saying that she had so much energy left, she didn't know what to do with it, so she had to put it into something. So
wow.
The other one's looking a bit tired, and last time she saw me, she said, oh, I've got to make you another one. You need something on the back. But so I wear this for two serious reasons. Number one, it shows me how fragile my belief in this can be, how easy it can be shaken. And so that must be true for a lot of people too. But secondly, it's testimony to the fact that if you just do the work, it works. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to be, meditating all day long or whatever. It just works if you allow your perception to shift 180 degrees for just a little while. That's all it takes. And that kind of transformation. That's why she's put on the back here. Radical forgiveness transforms. That kind of transformation can happen in seconds instead of 20 years because it's energetic. It's an energy shift. It's not a mental thing. It's not a choice that you make. It's a perceptual shift, but it happens at the energetic level. And that on all the energy that's tied up in the story that keeps it together and keeps it looping, as we've heard earlier on, right? That looping thing is just the energy being repeating itself and throwing up a new version of the original one as a means to heal it. So it's all part of the healing process. But if we can collapse that energy field, the whole field collapses, including the loops and including the original trauma. So that's why it works so effectively, and that's why it's so valuable for the corporate people, because they see results straight away. And they see that the energy field of the corporation, which is, by the way, a sum total of all the energy fields of each individual, as a morphogenetic field, if each individual's energy is raised and frequency is raised, then that means that the overall corporation's energy is raised. So it's all part of being more efficient, more productive, and in the end, more abundant.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
that was radical. Thank you. Yeah, for sure. So that was Colin Tipping, and his chapter in the book, 27 Flavors of Fulfillment, is called Radical Living for an Expanded Consciousness. And I think we all got to expand our consciousness here today. And I love what you said about, it's one thing to sit here and absorb and expand and to grow and evolve. It's another thing to take that home with you, and to implement and to practice and to remember that once you get into a situation that might be, might bring up old feelings of hurt and pain, remember what Colin said. Remember the 4-step process. Remember forgiveness. And remember, little pieces of what everybody said here today, because, that's what it's all about. It's not about taking all this information in your brain right now and trying to, your brain might explode. It's about just absorbing what you can and doing little by little. And I love what somebody said earlier today, Cristina, with the book, just read one chapter a week.
Yeah, I thought that's a great idea.
One chapter a week, and there's practices in there, there's stories, there's meditations, there's so much that once a week is going to help continue your personal evolution, personal and spiritual evolution. So, so thank you, Colin.
Well, just in case people want to go for those 4 steps, I do have them as a free thing on my website, so colintipping.com, easy enough to remember. So they can go there and get.
I'm serious about the little business card.
I know we do that.
Wallet. Oh, you do have
them?
Yeah,
we do.
Awesome.
Yeah. We do them for ourselves, but people can make their own and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But our business card has it on the back. Yeah.
Oh, okay, nice, awesome.
Yeah.
I want one. How do I get one?
Send you one. Okay.
All right.
The website.
Beautiful. So thank you so much. To pick up the book, 27flavors.net, or go ahead and click the link below to pick it up, get your copy. There's an ebook version or a physical hard copy version. And you heard it here, Colin Tipping. Thank you for joining us again. Now we have one last interview. David and I are going to wrap it up. This has been an extraordinary day, and I'm excited to interview David Dibble about his work, dream interpretations, and conscious systems and character types, and everything that you've been developing and building and cultivating for the last 20 plus years?
A little, yeah, 20-some.
20-some years? A long time.
And you're in for a treat. I interviewed him earlier along, and he's got some really juicy information. So
absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Sir?
Yeah, pleasure.